Hi, I'm Kevin Peanut Butter DeCamp.
And I'm Trevor Pineapple Princess. And this is VTV,
the definitive podcast for all things LGBTQ plus focused.
where we explore the intersection of pop culture, queer travel, as well as progressive perspectives within our community.
How are you doing today?
Oh, I am revved up. We are doing episode 2 of VTV, and I couldn't be more excited to be here with you.
You would think that we would be so drained because we just got off of the Summer Splash Tour.
And for the people at home, what was the summer tour?
It was 6 destinations in 6 cities that we celebrated Pride and brought a little bit of VACAYA flavor to each experience.
Yeah, we would power pool parties or pool games, pride parades. It was unlike anything I've ever done before in my entire life.
Well, you're the most prideful person I know.
Thank you, Kevin.
Yeah.
Right back at you. And we're still recovering and recuperating because as much as I love gay stuff, gays are exhausting.
I honestly need more. I think I'm addicted now.
One of the benefits of doing the summer tour was getting to interview and talk to people really from all along the East Coast and all of the places that we went to. We got to interview some very, very interesting characters in P-Town and New York, as well as this queer-owned little coffee shop in this small little town in upstate New York. Getting to now share those interviews and those discussions with you on future episodes is very, very exciting. What were some of the highlights for you during the summer tour, Kev?
Summer tour Key West, as far as like the Key West Pride was so magical. A part of that was Island House, which we stayed at, our clothing optional resort. We powered some parties there and also was in the Key West Pride Parade. We got so many fun locals or people visiting to march with us. And
that's so
they
cool.
brought it in a level that I've never seen before.
Wow.
This like energy just emanated out of them and really brought the VACAYA spirit to what we were doing there.
And it was clothing optional, you said?
Yeah.
Did that feel reminiscent at all of like VACAYA's red light district or anything like that?
Yes. That window of exploration is available, just like on a VACAYA trip.
Totally.
What is your highlight from the summer tour that comes to mind?
I didn't get to go to Key West, so I missed out on that spot, but we did do some gay camping for one of the weeks, and that was probably one of my highlights. I thought that everybody mixed and mingled with everybody, no matter what your background was or your age or your gender identity. It just felt inclusive. It felt very much of like what VACAYA is. And it was also clothing optional. So we'd be like having breakfast and then we'd look out the window and there'd be like these 2 guys fully naked working on the deck of their house, and they had like these 2 twinks that were like helping them do some drilling and screwing and with the wood, with the lumber.
With the lumber.
Yeah, the lumber.
Every word you're saying is
So
we need to be, yes.
It just was very magical.
I loved also dressing up like a camper and handing out s'mores. There's something innately erotic that I enjoy about the aspect of being able to be in nature and to have that space feel safe to explore like some kind of sexual or like physical attraction.
I understand what you're saying. There's like a feeling
Thank
that just
you.
feels
Aligned with the true, authentic pureness of not having clothes, the pureness of just seeing somebody and being like, oh, are we locking eyes? Are we like having a moment? And then being able to act on that moment with a bunch of birds around and like trees, and it's like wind. You feel wind everywhere.
This is the part of the podcast where you close your eyes and Kevin's going to read you a nice meditation and make you feel like you're naked in the woods, everyone.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Okay, great.
For a lot of our tour stops, what we were doing was kind of trying to enhance whatever the experience was. So when you were at Island House in Key West, you kind of like helped power some pool parties and you did Pride.
Exactly.
And at the campground, we hosted some pool games and we did like a s'more social. And at the end of, I want to say almost every kind of, place we went to, Fire Island, New York, the people we interacted with, they really felt like we made a difference, and that felt very special. So anyone that's listening who we might have met on the summer tour, hi, and I hope that we get to see
More
them
of you.
again. Yeah, it was such a fun way to connect with such a variety of people. During the tour, we wanted to kind of use that as an opportunity to talk to some of the people that live in other places that we wouldn't normally get the opportunity to see, or we only see them on trips. So on today's episode, we are going to be giving you 3 teases of upcoming interviews for episodes of VTV.
For just a sampling of what's to come, just to wet the palate.
Yeah, we kind of want to just like wet your palate a little bit.
Is there an echo in here?
If you're listening at home and not watching, if you could only see Kevin's face. And what was so cool too is that a lot of these stops, we had some of our VACAYA guests come and meet us in New York City. We marched in the New York City Pride Parade, which was crazy, but we had some VACAYans come and join us in the parade. And
also,
how special is that?
Yes. Entertainers we got to hang out with and interview for a future episode you'll see. A lot of very fun people.
Yeah, and speaking of those interviews, today's episode, we are going to preview 3 of those interviews for upcoming episodes that are going to be coming up. And so I think we should kind of get into it. Talk about who we're teasing today. First up is Ivan Quintanilla, who is a LGBT travel journalist who's been on multiple VACAYA experiences, the sweetest guy. And we got into some really fun topics about gay travel.
Because he's been everywhere.
Literally everywhere.
Because he has that experience and the VACAYA flavor. Like, he can really tell you a lot about what the LGBT experience is around the world.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where LGBT travel it's very different than just traveling with your family or traveling in general. So it was really fun and very informative to get a little bit of perspective of how different it can be.
Let's hear a slice of that.
In the travel landscape, do you feel like you have to kind of change a bit when you're doing travel like outside of an all LGBT experience versus when you're traveling solo, or even when the 2 of you are traveling together? You just have to be more cognizant of where you're going and what you're doing and how you can express yourself.
Yes. I mean, I think in general, like everybody in our community, you know, there's an awareness and there's a safety factor that you have to take into account.
Yeah.
I would be concerned about that in many places of the US. Like if I travel to like the deep South, I would be very aware of like this, you know, code switching, or like I would be concerned about that. And definitely when you're going to different cultures and different places, one thing that I want to make sure that I do is just be respectful of the culture as well. So though I am an out and proud gay man, I think it's important when you travel to and you're in somebody else's space, you're in their home.
Sure.
So what that means to different people is different things. Sure. To me, it moderates my behavior in a way that I try to still be me, but being respectful within their world.
Yeah.
And also as a tourist, we have extreme privilege. Like there's so much that we can get away with that people in places that are not as LGBTQ friendly, or whose laws are not as LGBTQ friendly, cannot do that. And for the most part, people will leave us alone and they'll treat us kindly because we're tourists and they know all that. And so I think there's also an aspect of like a responsibility to the LGBTQ community there that you don't, I'll speak for myself. I don't want to like walk into a space and somehow like out locals in a way that then I get to leave and they have to stay there. So
and deal with the potential repercussions.
Yeah. So I think it's important to just like be yourself, but be aware of your surroundings and just like be a little kinder than you think you need to be. Just be a little more aware than you think you need to be. One of the most wonderful things about traveling with VACAYA is that you don't have to moderate your behavior when you're in that group, because you are with like-minded people and you all do like full ship charters. Yeah. You know, you do a full buyout of the resort. So everyone that you are around is on your team and is there to make sure that you have the best time ever. And that is one of the things that I find so valuable, because you don't have to be thinking like, am I acting funny? Am I touching my boyfriend in a wrong way? Like, even in places that are LGBTQ friendly, like, you know, you can go to any resort in the US and potentially, if you're like kissing your boyfriend at the pool the way any other couple would, you're going to get funny looks. And that's one of the reasons why I love LGBTQ vacations and being on LGBTQ trips, because it's so nice to not worry about that. And it just that just frees you up to be yourself and enjoy yourself in a way that you can't fully do when you're kind of moderating your behavior.
I really enjoyed getting to spend some time with Ivan, because on these trips there's so much going on, and for Ivan, he's getting to experience it as a guest. So it was neat to kind of sit down with Ivan for a while and really get an in-depth kind of idea of his VACAYA experience and his travel experience in general.
Yeah, and he's been with us since our inaugural cruise and all the way into our last cruise. So like he's gotten the arc of what VACAYA is now.
Totally.
Next up, we have Marti Cummings, and they are our small ship cruise director. The fact that we got to spend any time with this person in New York was very lucky.
Yeah.
They have a pulse on the political scene in New York specifically, too. So, and I think that comes across in this next clip. Can I ask you a specific question about that? The idea of like drag being power and there's power in it, and the idea of politics being kind of drag in a way. How do you relate the two?
Well, drag has always been political. Like I talk about in Drag 101, the first known drag artist in America, William Dorsey Swan, is somebody who was born into slavery. The first openly LGBTQIA plus person to run for office in this country was Jose Sarria, who was a drag artist. And drag and
Politics.
Yes, Kevin. Yes, getting there. Drag and politics are intersectional, and drag artists are given a platform to be able to advocate for members of our community, like the trans community and the genderqueer, two-spirit, non-binary community who are really under attack.
That's fascinating. Okay. Well, just because there's not a lot of people I at least am aware of. I know there's a few drag queens that run for office. But you are the...
Maybe a girl in California ran for office. There's this wonderful drag artist, Bridget, in Texas, who was just at the Capitol advocating for LGBTQ rights, along with Jiggly and Joey J. Honey Mahogany, who a lot of people in the mainstream know from season 3 of RuPaul's Drag Race. They ran for the Board of Supervisors in San Francisco. They are now the elected head of the Democratic Party in San Francisco.
So are y'all like pretty tight then? Like, would we say that you're all like kind of like a drag party of yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, we live in different parts of the country, but I think we all like know each other. Then there's amazing drag artists in New York City that are doing incredible work. They haven't run for office at this stage in their life, but they're doing incredible work. So there's a lot of drag artists doing, work around politics. You don't necessarily have to run for office to make change and make a difference. Yeah.
Great.
I think one of the great things about VACAYA and the team that we've assembled at the V team is we really try to be inclusive to all members of the LGBTQ community. Obviously we have a large group of gay guys coming. We're seeing more women, lesbians coming on our trips, which is amazing. Trans people and non-binary people, and that's reflected in our staff and the artists we hire, the performers we hire as well. So I think there's really something for everybody on our trips, between show programming and games and excursions. And then on the sex positivity part, I think we worked really well to create a safe environment for people who want to participate in a spicy atmosphere. And we try to make it as inclusive as possible. Also, we're all adults, and sex positivity is such an amazing thing. And for myself personally, in the last couple of years, since I got divorced, I really started to discover new things about my own sexuality and desires. I think having spaces that are safe to do that in are really important, and I think our team does a really good job of creating that.
Right, and not just a space anywhere. It's space near the Galapagos or
baby, you wanna diddle a dingle, you do it in a tropical or Antarctic environment.
You gotta stay warm somehow.
So what's also great about us is our ships are geared specifically for this. Our big ships are more in that vein. Our
Yes.
luxe trips are for people who want maybe a tamer experience. Our resorts are a nice mix of both. So there really is something for everybody, you know, and that's what I think is great. And there's no pressure to participate in anything you don't.
Would you say then you kind of design your own vacation in that way?
You design your own vacation, and we do the best we can to cater to everyone's needs. You know, yeah. Okay.
Magical.
Yeah, magic.
Tell us a little bit about Queen of New York.
Queen of New York, we screened it on the Bora Bora trip, but Queen of New York is a documentary about my 2021 campaign for city council. It was streaming on the Advocate channel, but it's wonderful. We got to go to Sundance with it. It premiered at the New Fest Film Festival in New York, which is an LGBTQ film festival. The film is about my campaign, but in many ways, I look at it, doesn't sound like a film about me or a film necessarily about the campaign, but for me, it's a film about a bunch of queer people coming together in coalition to stand up to better their community, to better their neighborhoods, to better be of service to their neighbors. And that's what like politics is all about to me, you know? And I hope if whoever watches this film, I hope for anybody really, I hope that they're inspired to get involved in local politics. And it also shows that like anybody can run for office.
Well, also like this idea of you heading a community is very much a parallel to VACAYA. You are bringing people together in VACAYA's instance to have a good time.
Yeah.
So like you are the mother of
VACAYA.
I always am very much in awe of listening to Marti because Marti really is such an advocate, not only for queer people, but just in general. Like when I think of the word advocate, I think of Marti. I'm very much looking forward to our listeners getting to hear and see that full interview because Marti is just so spectacular.
Get ready for that.
Speaking of pulses, my pulse accelerated a little bit for our last tease of this episode, which was with Johnathan, who is a sexual health expert. You can find him online at Rectal Rockstar. It was fascinating, this conversation. I feel like we both learned so much when it comes to sexual health, sexuality, and it's not just men's sexual health. We covered literally the whole gender spectrum with Johnathan, and it was so fascinating.
And Johnathan has helped me understand my body and enjoy it more. And you'll find out about that in the full episode.
But no pun intended. For now, let's dive into a little tease of our interview with Johnathan.
Hit it.
Did you always have an interest in specializing in LGBTQ plus health when it came to like getting into the medical field?
I really didn't. I've been an advocate for my whole life, and very much have put myself in any space that I can to advocate for LGBTQ people. But it was never really my plan to be like in this professionally. And my first rotation in school was gynecology, and I was like horrified. Like I have never seen a vagina. I've never wanted to see a vagina, and I'm going to now spend 8 weeks looking at vaginas. And everyone was like, it'll be fine. Like you're going to see babies be born. That's so amazing. And it is amazing to see a baby be born. But my favorite part was sexual health. I was like, this is so cool. Helping people enjoy something that's so innate to the human experience. And when something goes wrong, be able to fix that. And so I really found a huge passion in that. And then very luckily sort of landed into the field that I've ended up in to get to explore sexual health with a primarily LGBTQ population, but not always. I have plenty of patients in all walks of life. And I feel very passionate that anal sex is something that our bodies are actually designed for. And you'll never hear any other healthcare professional say that, although I hope you do in the future. But it's so interesting how much is happening in this little space, right? So the skin around the anus has a ton of nerves, and the only place that has more like sensory nerves to experience pleasure is the genitals. But the anus is like number 2. So much sensory pleasure. And I would equate it to like the nipples or like the ear, like places that are sort of very sexual in nature without being genitals. And in people with a prostate, the prostate gets like all this credit for anal sex, and it should, because it's a huge pleasure zone. But there's actually an aspect of the penis that sits right up against the rectal wall, and so the penis is actually directly stimulated during anal sex. And then in people without a prostate, without a penis, who have clitoris, the clitoris actually has these nerve branches that wrap back around the anus. And so the clitoris is stimulated during anal sex. And then in people with a clitoris, there's this Skene's gland, which variably in the research is sometimes called the G-spot.
Oh, sure.
And it's a spot sort of right between the rectum and the anus. And so you're actually like stimulating all of this stuff. And the more that I think about it and learn about it and research, the more I'm like, wow, our butts were designed for sex. And so intelligently, and so and you think about like heterosexual people who I've met some of, think about pregnancy when they have sex, and it's like we have this gift of this place to have sex where you don't have to worry about pregnancy. How beautiful is that?
Totally.
You're saying that the stimulus from sex, female or male, is stimulated anally. Is that right? Like,
yeah, like no matter what your gender
It'll be
bodies
lit
are,
up.
like they're getting stimulated during anal sex.
Do you think a lot of people with clitorises and vaginas know that? Do you think that that's like a
No.
common... And I've got a lot of girlfriends, and I hope all the girlfriends are watching this episode, because like...
brag.
I mean, I'm lucky. That's why maybe it's because I worship women. That's why I have so many, I'm lucky enough to have so many female friends. That needs to be yelled from the rooftops then.
Yeah. And so many women often have sort of unsatisfying sex because people don't know how to navigate their genitals. And I think it's sort of funny that like there's this whole other section of their genitals they don't even know about. But it is actually fairly common. About a third of heterosexual people have anal sex. And not a lot of people are talking about it. But the women that do talk about it, or anyone who has a clitoris, really describes this like orgasm during anal sex as completely different and like mind-blowingly different from the orgasm during vaginal sex. And it's like, who even knew that was on the menu?
Yeah, right.
That blows my mind. I'm gonna have to process that.
I'm going to have to prostate that. That was bad. It was stupid.
We're going to cut that.
Okay, yeah. He's not going to cut it. He's going to leave it to make me look like a ding dong.
The sort of biggest thing that we think about in terms of discomfort with anal sex, assuming that there's not a pathology though, like if there's a fissure or hemorrhoids, like that's going to be an issue. But in someone who doesn't have those things, then we really focus a lot on the sphincter muscle, which is the
outer
muscle at the opening of the anus. It's really like a cuff that is maybe like an inch deep from the surface, like internally.
Okay.
And it has two components, the inner and the external.
Okay.
And they're inner and external to themselves, not to the body. So it's like sort of one cuff and then around it another cuff.
Wow.
The inner cuff is involuntary muscle, so similar to what our heart's made out of. So it just does what it's going to do and your brain cannot control it. And then you have the external sphincter, so the outer cuff that's wrapping around the internal sphincter, which you do control. So it's like your bicep. Like you can fully, if you like clench your
Contract.
butt right now, you're clenching your external sphincter. And so if you're having sex and you want something in your anus, you can say, external sphincter, please relax, and it will do that for you. But your internal sphincter will not. It's going to just like do its own thing. And if your internal sphincter's only been one way for 20, 30 years, it's going to be kind of confused when you're trying to use it in the opposite direction.
That is crazy.
Right? So I love to compare it to heart muscle because it actually responds in a really similar way. So if you think about like, if you're anxious, if you're nervous, if you're uncomfortable, your heart's racing, your sphincter's also like clenching. If you're relaxed, if you feel comfortable, if you feel safe, then your internal sphincter will relax and your heart will relax.
So it's just involuntary, like it's truly a mind thing. then that it's attributing its releasing towards?
Yeah, so you're like stimulating a nerve path when you're relaxed that lets parts of your body relax.
Whoa.
Yeah. So if you're like, I always have pain with sex, right? Your brain's immediately gonna be like, clamp down. And I think that's where a lot of people really struggle with it. And so one of the best ways of like learning your sphincter is to spend time on your own and like make your anus a sexual organ to yourself.
But would you attribute that to relaxing? Like knowing how to relax in general?
Yes, relaxing in general is super
Because
helpful.
I don't know how to do
Yeah,
that.
I was just gonna say.
So this is all adding
maybe
up.
maybe we should also do an episode on how to relax, so you then can learn how to relax your hole. Whew, but my butt is sore.
My butt is not sore because I learned a lot from the rectal rock star and how to relax.
Are you relaxed right now?
You have to find out in the next full episode.
Speaking of relaxing, actually, I feel like this was a great ending to episode 2. It's time to maybe kick back and relax a little bit.
That's the end of episode 2. Thank you for sticking with us, and you can find the full episodes on our YouTube channel. Also, stream our audio episode on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
As well as other platforms coming soon. And you can always find previews and clips of these episodes on our social media at VACAYA on Instagram and TikTok. It was a joy.
It was a pleasure.
I love a good tease, and that's what today's episode was all about.
We definitely edged.
Well, now it's time to go and relax and blow off some steam.
Is that how we do it? Bottoms up. Thanks, Johnathan.